right. What's up, Nick? Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Tell us who you are and what you do.
So my name is Nick Fraunfelder. I am the owner and CEO of Sure Oak Digital Marketing. Just quick plug on us, won't be much, but we do paid SEO, analytics, and just kind of all things tactical on the marketing side.
Awesome. Well, tell us, how did we get to owning the agency? You actually bought this agency pretty
hmm
recently. Tell us, how'd you get to this point? Why did you want to buy an agency?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah. Yeah. When I told my friends about it, like, hey, I'm buying a digital agency, like, oh, you must be drunk, right?
Yeah, you
That
moron.
is an yeah, you moron, right? That is so hyper competitive, and why would you do that? So kind of stepping back. So I've been a CRO for SaaS companies for over 10 years, right? And so like having revenue conversations with clients, potential leads, that has basically been my life. And so I came out of venture capital where that was interesting in itself, but like venture capital was hyper competitive and we were making bigger and bigger bets on more risky assets as we went along. And I was like, why can't I just buy some cash flow and do what I love? And so I guess it was November 2022. I left my firm and I was like, okay, I'm just going to do a search. And that's a story in itself. But I decided, like, I'm going to buy cash flow. I'm not going to have partners anymore. And I'm going to dictate my future, just like any agency owner that you have. It's like, I need that freedom and to set the direction and do what I love. And so even though I was a partner at a VC firm, I always had a boss. Even though I was a CRO, it's like I still reported to investors and boards, and it was so liberating. Just like, if I have the capital, I'm going to do this on my own, and that's really long answer to your short question.
Why a digital agency? Because I think, obviously everybody listening to the show is a digital agency and they want the
Yep.
option to sell one day, right? And I always
Right.
tell everybody is like, when you know what you need to do next, you should sell, but I want people to have options. So why an agency? Why not? Like,
Yeah.
you were in the SaaS market and products, and you could buy anything you wanted. Why an agency?
So the agency, well, a couple things that are really great about digital agencies. One is that they're cash flow machines, and not just their cash flow machines, they're repeatable revenue machines. And so just so that your potential agency owners know the perspective of the buyers, we're looking for, you know, client retention rate over the industry average of 8 months. So like if you're at 12, in my case, this company was 18 months, like, oh, that's something I can go to my capital because I actually did a large part of my buy with debt. So the bank is dictating what they like and dislike. And so even just within the agency world, the branding agencies or the strategic agencies are almost like off the table because they have customer concentration or they don't have repeatable revenue and the churn is way too high. But the digital agencies, like, okay, well, now here we're on 12-month retainers with a 97% renewal rate. That's something that the bank can get behind. And I get to still have the revenue conversations. I still get to talk to CEOs about their business, how they're, having sales conversations and how that dictates into, tactical, marketing conversations digitally. And so for me, that was a win-win.
Oh, that's awesome. And what when you were going through the due diligence, because I think a lot of people are getting excited listening to this episode, right? Because they're like, well, shit, I didn't know I was worth that much. Like,
hmm
what is a healthy churn rate or retention rate that you were looking for, or the bank said you have to be at this part?
Right. No, okay. So, and I'm happy to actually share this with your audience. So, what I put together was just a model. And so I take all the current contracts of the digital agency and I blow it down to the contract end date. And how much, like, is it a year before I totally run out of revenue or is it 6 months? So the longer that tail, so like there wasn't any magic churn rate. It's just like how, because it's chunky, right? Because some customers are worth 100,000 a month, and some are only
Yep.
worth 2,000. But as it was like that 100,000, if that rolls off a little early, then like my model is completely shot. So you actually, it's not just like, hey, I have a 3% churn rate. That's just great. But if all your contracts end in 6 months to the potential buyer, like it's going to be a no go, right? Because like I'm just going to blow it all down. I'm going to assume I can have like reasonable renewal that no one's going to leave, but like I can't count on it. So for me, when I looked at this acquisition, I had 18 months of some revenue where I felt like I wouldn't totally lose myself. So if I'm the worst salesperson, worst marketing agency in the world, at least I have 18 months to actually turn it around and figure it out. So that's the way I viewed it. And I think that's the way the bank looked at it as well.
That's very interesting. And I think as an agency owner, you're owning your own agency, if you start looking at it that way too, because I remember when I ran the first agency, we would do our budgeting this way. I would look at my bank account and I look at my
Mhm.
expenses and going, great, I got 2 months runway.
Right.
And then I remember looking one time, I'm like, holy shit, we might not be able to make payroll this year. And then it got me really interesting in forecasting models of looking,
Right.
just like you said, going, when do these contracts run out? And let's not even anticipate renewing them. Like that's gravy, but like how long?
Mhm.
I like how you actually said we have 18 months to figure this out, to figure out,
Yeah. Right. Right.
the systems. It's really interesting. And I think people listening, if you guys go do that exercise, like how long could you guys operate?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's always a good idea, I think. And this was actually a positive for me looking at the deal. There were a lot. So I'm buying basically from somebody else. I bought from Tim and Com, Tom and Kim. I got that totally mixed up. But they were just awesome people. But it was a lifestyle business for them. So there were things like in marketing expense and some operating expense, maybe a little overselling on some tools that like I knew right away I was going to get more EBITDA out of the deal. And so if buyers are actually listening to this, you got to pay particular attention to the efficiencies you got to get, because if you have debt on the deal, you're not going to be able to grow that much. You're going to be paying all that new headcount that you had in mind to the bank instead of into your business. And so like that's the greatest thing. So if you are an agency owner, you're debt free, you run a really clean P&L, you're going to get a multiple that you like. And there's a couple of ways also, I just wanted to throw this in, but like the way I make money in these deals is through just a concept I call MED. Is it's multiple expansion, earnings expansion, and debt pay down. And so just to agency owners, right? So if you can expand your multiple, and a lot of it's the work that you do. I mean, that's focusing on a niche, making yourself more sticky. If you have better renewal rates, if you have just a couple things on the technical side, like data that you're really good at, you're probably going to get a better price in the market. The next is earnings expansion. So one, that's more sales, but like increasing your bottom line. So get rid of all those expenses. And then for me, I did take on debt, but one of the strategies of debt, if I buy it for 5 million, I pay it off all in 5 years. I sell it again for 5 million. Well, that 5 million is mine with very little down. So that's the way I view it. And so if you can make yourself attractive to that type of buyer with that framework, I think that's really helpful and really powerful.
So it's a kind of a term I call kind of recasting, right? And
Mhm.
when I sold the first business, and maybe even in this business, right? There's expenses that like, hey, you need a website. Like I'd always go to my uncle when I'd go to fly to New
Yeah, yeah,
York.
yeah.
I'd be like, hey, you need a website? Oh, I could write this one off, right? There's always
Yes.
those where we had a race team. Like these are
Mhm.
expenses that will not continue with the new
Right.
buyer that you have to recast. Now, as a buyer, you're probably going in, and I think that's what I heard you say, is you're looking at, well, I already have this type of expertise in this. I'm not going to have
Mhm.
this expense anymore. So you're kind of recasting that to make the EBITDA probably even better, but
Yeah.
maybe the owner may not be doing that as well. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. And so, I mean, it's expensive on the back end, but if agency owners do want to use representation or a broker. There's some great ones out there. I bought the agency through a broker relationship that I had, but that the broker will actually go through you, and they get to a number called seller discretionary earnings. So it's an EBITDA plus correction. So what you find is like, well, this marketing expense has, my kid's cell phone or something on there. I mean, I know not everybody's doing that, but let's just say it did happen.
No, no one,
So, but there
no
are
one, no one does that.
no one does that.
Me and you and I don't do that, but
yeah, I don't know. No, my books are so clean. And so, but when it comes to the bottom line, we add all those things back, like, hey, this won't continue. Or so Tom, for mine, he had a WeWork space that he paid for himself. That's going to stop when he leaves. So I get that back. We add the salary that they were taking. We add that back. So I have that. And then for me as a buyer, I'm like, well, what else can I, improve the EBITDA with? Because the number one rule for my business is the bank gets paid every month, right? So I got to make sure that there's fat enough margin in there to pay the bank back, and to make sure that, I'm able to have some, obviously make payroll, and then I get paid last. That the agency owners all know that, but there's got to be enough in there that I'm able to, keep the wife and the 3 kids happy.
Right. And one at Auburn.
And the one at Auburn, yeah, out of state tuition for sure.
Yeah, but my oldest is looking at colleges, and I literally went to my wife. I'm like, school is how much? Like, you're old when you start going like, I only paid like 5,000, and I was, I had a scholarship and that kind of stuff. I'm like, holy cow! Like, and I'm like, don't get me started.
No, I feel you. It is out there, but he's interning at Sure Oak too, so we're trying to get it back out of him. So.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Good. What other levers are you looking at? Like, I know when I look at a business to buy, I'm looking at going, all right, where are they generating all their business? And are you looking at it too of going, how can I multiply that? So if they're generating their business just through this one partnership, are you looking at it going, how do I get other partnerships like that? Or how can I get other channels?
Right. So if you're like me, I was just a CRO. So I knew a little bit about channels, but I had never owned an agency. Right. So I think that was kind of the confusion around why I wanted to go into this. But, what I did is, I just had a fast screen of the metrics that I liked. And one of them I think you'll absolutely agree with is, what is their sales mousetrap? So one, is the revenue repeatable? Is it renewing? What's the churn? But like, how many leads or how many MQLs to SQLs am I getting? And what's the close rate? Like, the owners, you've got to figure that out, right? Because like, what am I buying if every deal is because the CEO is so well known and goes to every conference and is closing all the deals? Well, then if that person walks out the door, I have no mousetrap anymore. But if it's like a process where like Sure Oak is really good at SEO, thankfully, because that's a big part of our business, right? So we're able to get tons of organic leads with really out much, acquisition cost. So I'm getting a funnel of plenty of leads. I got, a decent close rate, and it varies by product category. My link building's higher than my SEO because that's more competitive. And my partnership, close rate is like 80%, right? So like, that's what I'm looking for. And then I can forecast that out. And then you kind of see like, why aren't we spending more money on partnerships? Or why aren't we spending more money on link building? And like, SEO, our SEO is great, but let's say if it wasn't, then like, now I know where to allocate resources in the recast, as you called it. So I think that mousetrap, whatever you do, and one thing I got to be honest. I mean, I'm going to probably irritate some of your audience here, but what I really loved about digital agencies, like they were great at marketing, but not so great at sales most of the time. Right. So like when I would come into these conversations, I'm like, hey, here I come in, I'm a sales guy. I know enough about marketing, but like, I really want to talk to you about, doing problem selling, consultative selling with prospective clients. And I thought that was a good fit for me.
Well, the reason being is agency owners are most likely accidental agency owners.
Yeah.
They knew how to do SEO really well. And then someone was like, for example, like with your owners, I bet they knew how to do it really well. And then people asked them going, hey, can you do this for me? And they're like, crap, man, I can make money out of this. Let's turn this into an agency.
Yeah.
And their business grew on referrals, not the three channels that I look at for sales, right? Like inbound, outbound, and strategic
Yep.
partnerships. And then if one
Exactly
goes
right.
down, I almost flicked you off by like taking one of my fingers down. Well,
Was it
that'd
the
be good.
outbound one, the
That'd be
one
a good
that's hurting you the
thumbnail. Like,
most?
hey, here you go.
That's your outbound right there, buddy.
Yeah, there's your outbound right here, right in the middle, the middle finger, everyone.
It's hard.
But that I think that's why a lot of agency owners are, their whole business is based on referrals.
Mm-hmm.
And like you
And in your
said,
experience, you see more than I do, but like how big does a referral type business get? Like, is it like 3 million? Because I feel like there's a ceiling on some of these
there is a
referrals.
ceiling. Yeah. It's anywhere from about like, I think like 2 million to maybe 3 million.
Mhm.
And like anywhere from, I always tell, my members, like, I'm like, hey, and most of our members are anywhere from 1 million to 10 million. We have some above that, some a little bit under that. I'm like, you guys are in no
Right.
man's land.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? I'm like, well, you look at your business, because when we had 100 people working for us, it was actually easier than when we were at 20.
Mhm.
Because the 20, like with the wrong kind of leadership team, like you're still trying to build the leaders up. But once you build the right leaders, like when you're at 100 people or 1,000 people or 5,000 people, like the companies I've consulted for with that many,
Right.
the CEO, he never hears those big problems. Like his leadership team and all those levels are fixing that. But they all know where they're going and what the
Right.
vision is, right? Like our vision is to create a resource I wish I had, where
Yep.
we, put the coolest agency owners together that are transparent, know really good work, want to grow, all this kind of stuff, right? Like it's easy to put that together versus if I said, I just want to sell agency owners. That's what I'm like, how do I? And then that's when you get all the LinkedIn messages like, do you want
Yeah.
15 guaranteed leads? I'm like, you're full of shit.
Yeah, 10 a day. 10 a day at least.
It's all the same shit too.
But you said something really interesting there, and you were kind of alluding to it. But like as a buyer, I don't want the CEO not to have a lot of processes. Like I want to buy from a guy that spends 8 hours a month on his business, right?
Yep.
And so if you're an agency owner and you're dictating all the decisions, like nobody's going to want to buy your firm because like then they're going to have to they're going to go have to hire a VP, So one thing that's really attractive about Shuro, because I have Lauren. And so if you're a big fan of EOS, I'm visionary, she's integrator, and she takes care of everything, make sure every project, everything's on task. And she was a godsend from the beginning. And I knew, I had a sense about her before the acquisition, but like it was right on. And so, if you can get your Lauren or whatever you name that person, but like get your chief of staff, integrator, COO, that's going to make your life a lot better and incentivize that person. And me as a buyer, like first thing I had to do was like, okay, Lauren, like, how do I keep you? Right. Like that's what you want. Because if I didn't have a Lauren, I'd have to hire that person in.
Did the owner stay on with the agency?
No. And that was kind of like part of the deal was like, hey, do we need you to stay on? Do we not? Tom had been out of the business for 3 years for the most part. So I was like, yes, that was great. He was really smart about 4 years, 4 years ago, he gave a big chunk of equity to Kim, and Kim was all through the business, but like she had done a really good job pouring into people and gave me like a very stable team. And that was, the people. I'm buying a service business, so I'm buying the people. So
Yep.
I know you probably don't want your people to know you're selling, but you're gonna have to give the buyer some sense of resumes. Here's what they're doing, why they're incentivized to stay. Because the last thing I want is like my most technical person to walk out the door, day one. I mean, that is a no-go for me.
And I presume this was an asset purchase?
It was an asset purchase. Yep.
Yeah. And so when you bought, you had to he had to tell the employees or the team members that they were bought and you had to redo contracts. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. All new contracts all happened like within 48 hours of each other. It was absolute madness. Yeah.
Did you do any contingencies to say like, I need these 3 key employees to stay? They need to sign before I sign on the dotted line?
Yep. So there was a cadre of what we call key people, and this was actually by the bank, not even me. So like if you are doing like financing as a part of your deal on the buyer side, there was like, okay, so who must stay for the next year as like key people, and can we know a little bit about them? So we had to let some people into the secret, let's say like a month before close. And so there were 3 people that signed like, hey, I had to give up equity, as a part of that deal to keep these people around, but like that's I love doing that, right? I want people to feel ownership. So yeah, that's the way it worked out. But you got to let some people know, because that's what you're buying.
Exactly, which is a good exercise for all of you, even if you're not selling. Like, if you were selling tomorrow, who would be the A players you want to have? And if there are some C, D, or F players, like I always joke around with people. I'm like, and this just happened to me. I hired a marketing person. This person would never call us back.
Okay.
Right. So that was a strike one off hiring this person. But literally, I went to Stacy. I said, if this person quit tomorrow, I would be happy. And then we both looked at each other and were like, we know what we need to do. And then I tried to set up a meeting. They would never call me back. So I could never fire this person. So I just had to turn off all the access. I was like, really? Like, you will not call me back? Like,
it's like out of that movie Office Space or something. Yeah, well, we just turned off his
literally
access cards.
Yeah, like this person was amazing on the pre-interview, right? Did all the research, amazing interview. Everyone on the team loved this person. And then after like 2 weeks of training, we could never reach this person. Or she would say, I prefer text messaging and email communication versus calling. I'm like, I'm a collaborative person. Like my team, we always chat. And so it was the weirdest experience, Nick. Like I was
so
just like,
awkward.
yeah, it was crazy. So now my requirements when I hire people, I'm like, will you call me back?
The bar just keeps getting lower, right?
Yeah, it's low. It's very low. Yeah, it's nuts. I'm still like, we were chatting about it earlier this morning with the team. I was like, well, what happened? Like, I still don't even know what happened because she never called me back.
I'm sorry, man.
Goofy.
It happens to all of us. You see, I mean, I can't imagine the stuff that I've seen now, but whatever.
Oh, I've seen it all. I've had at the old agency, I've had sheriffs come in to like arrest people or garnish wages. I mean, like it's I mean, when you've been in it as long as I have, you see some weird stuff, and we're like,
yeah,
it's fun. Let's get back to contracts, right? So you were mentioning like there's a lot of agencies listening that love the month-to-month contract, but they hold on to their clients for 36 months and they have data to show that. What would you tell them?
So unless you've actually shown that month-to-month contract to renew for 24 months straight, I'm going to have a hard time valuing that contract. Right. And
but if they can show that,
I give them credit for it. But like, again, I am so scared because this is the typical scenario. And this happens in almost every deals, right? Revenue drops 10% right away after acquisition. And it's not because the CEO is bad or the old clients don't like it. It's like there's just distraction in the company, like across the board. And it did happen to us a little bit. And I think it was part of I bought in the fourth quarter. So a lot of contracts were just like, I kind of expected it. But if as much as you can push for your renewals teams, like, hey, we've done great work for you for 6 months. How about a 1-year contract and I give you a 5% discount, right? Like that is absolutely something you should do. I think the standard contract, Sure Oak, when I bought the company, they're going in with 6 months, and that's good for SEO link building because like you don't really know anything's going to happen for 6 months anyway, right? Because it's a slow roll. So they're able to explain that away. But I know guys on the paid media side, they have a really hard time getting into these longer contracts. So if you show any value in that first quarter or whatever, like go ahead and offer a discount to get in something bigger for a better retainer, because it will, that valuation, that repeatable revenue is so important to anyone doing financing. I mean, these deals are expensive. So some kind of debt or some other outside investor is going to be a part of it. And they're going to be looking at your fundamentals.
Yeah. What about when you bought, Did you tell the clients right away that it was under new leadership, or did you wait some time?
No, I'd spent a stint in the restaurant world, and like one of our best tricks was we just opened the doors. We didn't do a press release or anything because I just didn't want to spook anybody or have everyone on edge or have a big rush or whatever. So we didn't. And I figured I wasn't as important as the name is Sure Oak. So I just, I had meetings with the top strategic partners, particularly the other agencies that we do work with. Those were absolutely somebody I met with right away, but we didn't do a big press release. We just weren't out there to rock the boat because this is what I really liked about Sure Oak was like that account manager relationship that I had with these clients was really key. And it wasn't so much about the CEO or the owner. So that was important.
Yeah. Yeah, when we've bought agencies in the past, we don't tell people for 6 months because we don't
Yeah.
want to
Why
rock
would
the
you?
boat,
Yeah.
right? Like, when people kinda come in with the press release right off the bat, I'm like, "Why are you, like, just" you're tempting people because when people get bought, you automatically go, "Oh, service is gonna go to shit because
Yeah. Yeah.
Tom left, who was in charge
Hmm.
of everything." So I like that. Was there anything you would change that you've learned on this go around?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of lessons learned. I guess I'll give you one from the closing process. And, I don't know if lawyers listen to this, but like, do not let lawyers control your deal.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
yes. Preach it,
yeah,
preach it.
yeah, man. I just like they're good lawyers. They're there to scare you of everything that can go wrong. And so, but I would say attorneys added 2 months to my close process, and what should have been like a $65,000, I mean, my deal was really straightforward. It's a cash flow business, an asset purchase, couple non-competes, which are now illegal now, but,
Are
but
they
like,
really illegal for buying the agency?
I don't even know what the laws are, but I know like employee non-competes are now like thrown out the
Oh,
door. So,
okay.
but we had like some key employees. So it really was pretty straightforward. But then like everything got so cute at the end, like, and it was all within the last month or the last 60 days. And so I think who your legal counsel is on both sides, you really got to have an attorney that understands probabilities. It was like, hey, this could happen to you. I'm like, well, what's the chance of that happening? Because we had a little glitch with like cut over with payroll. Like, you're gonna have them on their payroll for 1 week. All they're gonna be their employees. And I was like, and what could happen so wrong? I mean, I'm just gonna reimburse them for the payroll costs. They're just gonna run it through the exact same Gusto account that I'm gonna take over. And like, I swear, like they would not back down off of it. So, like, I'm sure big firms are great; they have all the expertise. But I think having an attorney that maybe has done a lot of these deals, who knows your capital structure, who knows what you're doing, understands probabilities, and just explains it away from you, but doesn't hold up the deal. And if you can hold them to a number, I wish I would have done that. I absolutely wish I would have done that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, attorneys I mean, think about it. Both brokers and attorneys are incentivized like a broker is incentivized to sell your company. Okay.
Hmm.
So they're sometimes not acting in your best interest, just to let you know.
Right.
Because like
Yeah.
if they're a week away from a deal and they could be paid $400,000 just as commission, like as their brokerage, that's a big number that's going to incentivize them to give you bad advice. Not saying
Right.
all of them are that way. It is just that way. Then
Yeah.
you think about attorneys, they're incentivized to go over every possible scenario and to draw it out as long as possible because you're paying
Billable
them
hours.
hourly.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's a really just in general, when you're going into a sales process, you're a relationship guy, I'm a relationship guy. We're all about like, hey, how can we make our customers' lives better? How do we make our teams better? But you're going into from a relationship world into a transaction world. So brokers are transactions, your lawyers are all they don't want to see you again after this, right? They just, they want to get they're,
Yeah.
they're looking for the golden ring. And like, I mean, there are some great brokers out there. I love the one I worked with. But it's true. Like, unless you come, like, I have the money, I have the contracts, I'm ready to go. They don't want to deal with you otherwise, unless you check those three boxes. And then can you close? So you just got to like accept that as a buyer and seller. Like, this
Yeah.
is a one time thing. It's a big chunk of change. I got to make sure I manage the relationship in a transactional way as best I can, even though if you feel like I love everybody, I want everyone to feel good. That's not this type of relationship.
Yeah. And then on the typical deal structure that the bank helped you with, was it an all cash offer? Was it an earnout? Was it paid over
Mhm.
time? Any or like, did they retain ownership?
Mhm.
What could you tell us on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my deal, so this is kind of interesting. My deal was SBA. If Sure Oak goes under, I'm homeless, and my wife gets none of the life insurance if I die, right? So that's what's collateralized by an SBA loan. But like in typical deal scenarios, you're going to put up cash of 10 to 20% of the total value. I would say most owners should be prepared for 20% of the total enterprise value to be paid out over a period of 5 years in the form of a note. And the note is completely negotiable on the interest rate. But you know, it's subordinate to the senior debt. So you're gonna get a once over by the bank, and it's got to be approved by that. It was an all cash deal except for that last 20%. So they got 80% up front. There might be a little escrow just for contingencies for 6 months to a year, just to
Yep.
make sure like there's no hidden liabilities in there. But for the most part, I sent a big chunk of change over.
Okay. Very cool. Awesome. I always like to go over deal structures with people listening just so they have expectations, because a lot of times people think their agencies are worth so much more, and they
Yeah.
think they're going to get all that in cash, which I like that it was an 80% deal.
Hmm.
Like if I was consulting for the agency, I'd be like, yeah, it's a great deal. Like,
Yeah.
especially without an earnout. Earnouts are, oh, those are tough.
They are tough, and the banks won't allow it. So they just like,
Really?
I
I
don't
did
want
not know
fuzzy.
that.
In the SBA, they won't allow earnouts. They could do a note, but like they don't want the purchase price to change at all because they don't want to revalue it on their books. They just like,
Oh.
I don't want to do that. So, I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of like independent searchers like me who are doing SBA because it's probably the best loan you can get right now. It's 10 years. It's, prime plus like 3. So it's
That's it?
high. Well, it's still 11%. Still
Oh, prime
11%.
plus 3. I thought I just heard
Yeah.
3. I was like, "Really?"
No,
Like,
no. Yeah. Let me buy a house with that.
yeah,
So,
I was like, "Shit."
but it's adjustable. So in my world is, if the cash flows can sustain that 11% interest rate, well, you know, I hope the
What
Fed
profit
starts lowering
margin
rates.
last question, what profit margin
Mhm.
percentage were you looking at? Were you like, what was the floor of that profit margin?
So EBITDA margin specifically
Yeah.
25% about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
Perfect.
that's enough to Um, because like I think even from the buyer point of view, I had to calculate what I could service the debt and how much I could pay myself. And
Yep.
there's not a lot left over after all that, but like for me, that actually made the math work.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Well,
Yeah.
congrats on the
Thank
success of
you. It's
finding
been
the
fun.
agency. Like, I'm excited for you, and I'm excited to see where you can take it as well, especially when you get new blood. I bet the team is probably really excited, with your energy that you bring and the experience. Because a lot of times when the owner has been there, they kind of get bored of it. I feel over a while, and then they kind of check out, and then the team kind of starts
Yeah.
just coasting. And
Yeah.
you probably added some excitement to the agency, so congrats.
Different point of view for sure. I think they've liked it, but again, we're still a honeymoon, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
There you go.
So,
Well,
but I'm
awesome.
a big fan of your work. I love it. And I keep telling everyone that I'm associated with you, we got to focus. We got to focus more. So I think that you're right on in that. It just makes everything better.
Well, I mean, focus means finish one commitment until success.
Yeah.
It's not like, I interviewed someone this morning that I really liked. I was like, "Oh, please work out. Please call me
Mm.
back." Um, and she used to work for an agency, and I was like, "Well, what's going on with agencies?" So like, they weren't focused. They had a niche in
Mm.
SaaS, they had a niche in blah blah. Like, I was like, "How big was this team?" They're like 20. I'm like, "You have 20 different niches and 20 different people." I'm like, "No wonder they're struggling, and they're just on
Yes.
referrals too." So I was
Ugh.
like, "Yeah," I was like, "Send them to the podcast."
Send them to the podcast. Yeah. Come to the ranch. We'll get you straight. We'll get you
That's
straight.
awesome. Well, cool. What's the agency website? People can go and check you out.
Yeah, sureoak.com. And then check us out on our YouTube channel too. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Nick, for coming on. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you like, subscribe, share it out. And if you want to hang out with other really cool agency owners that can call you on your bullshit, can show you the strategies that's working for them, where you can kind of take little bits and pieces, I would love to invite all of you to check out the mastermind and just have a conversation with us. And we'll be honest, if we can help you out, we'll help you out. If we can't, no problem. But just go to agencymastery360.com, click on that scale button at the top. It's a big orange button if you miss it. I've failed you on conversion rate optimization, but I think you'll see the orange button. Click on that. And until next time, have a swank day. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want more content like this, make sure you click on the link on the screen or check out your most popular podcast platform where the full episode is there. And until next time, have a swank day. What are you doing? Go check it out. Click on the link. I'll see you soon.